Thank you very much for your interest. And I know that's not at the core of what you do every day. And that's why I'm also very pleased that you are interested in this topic. So, as Marco said, I'm an economist. I have been working for a long time on environmental questions. And about 15 years ago, I realized again that we have to tackle this growth question because we won't get solved the environmental problems. I have been with, I already my PhD was on an environmental topic. And I did my PhD in St. Gallen, and in St. Gallen, Binswanger, maybe some of you know him. He was already concerned with the growth topic. And then I, together with a friend, we took it up in the late 2000s. And since this time, it has occupied me quite a lot. So the topic is ignoring the limits to growth, some explanations, current discussions, and research. And what I intended to do, and also wrote in my abstract, first, I called it Overall Growth Critical Debate. I will introduce you in the topic and why it's a topic for me and most probably also for you. Then I will go into two highly sensitive issues linked to growth and its distributional justice and paid work. And then you will also understand better why it's so a core topic in our society and why we have so problems, to be honest, and to tackle it. And then the last part is on current discussions. I chose the topic of IPCC modeling because maybe you use the data and the models. Then I introduce a topic which I'm working on. It's growth dependence of enterprises. And then a last topic, it's about Swiss development. And I think we should be concerned of that. So I start, and I want to say a few words at the beginning so that you can frame what I say now. When I speak of growth, I mean economic growth and I mean GDP growth, not intellectual growth or cultural growth or anything like this. And GDP, most of you might know it, it's the value of goods and services which are produced in a country for 1 year minus the intermediate consumption. So when in the newspaper they write we have a growth of 1%, that's what is meant. And the second remark is that what I'm going to say is related to highly industrialized countries. Developing countries, emerging markets, that's a different topic. We can discuss it afterwards. I'm not so specialized in that. I know a little bit, but we really have to distinguish these different economies. So I want to start with showing you a graph on the history of economic growth. And what you see here is from 1800 to 2018. I haven't prolonged, but that's the pattern is clear. You see up to first the middle of the 19th century, it was really stagnant, then a little bit of growth. And then in the 50s, it's kind of exploded. And you see different countries. Switzerland is quite highly up. Also remark it's GDP per capita. And yeah, it's what you expect more or less economically successful countries. So now you might ask, why is it from 45 on or the 50s? And I want to show you that this was really a turn of era, kind of a new era started concerning economic development and economic growth. And what was particular in this time, in this decade, which really follows us until now? It's the reconstruction of the Second World War, of course. I have to say the first 3 points are highlighted by an historian from Bern, Pfister, and he said there was this change in the 50s because of the reconstruction of the Second World War, because of the Fordist consumer model and cheap and fossil fuels. What is the Fordist consumer model? You know Ford is the car, And Ford introduced a method of producing so that his workers were able to buy a car. And this was new at that time. And this model of production pervaded everywhere in all areas of production, and also came from the US to Europe. And this was a most important basis for the economic growth afterwards. Then in the 50s, we had a new indicator, GDP. This was new. It was only developed in the 30s. So there was a measure to be introduced to measure this economic development. And also in the 50s, we had the setting up of social security systems, of debt financing, of public finance, and growth fostering laws. So you see, institutions were built at that time, and there was already this factual, there was growth, and this idea, growth will go on. And this was integrated in these institutions. So, you know, for example, the Swiss AHV, it's based on growth. They expect that there are again and again more people to finance this system. And there are many other such systems. Of course, if you have public debt, you think that either you have inflation or you will grow to pay back this debt. So then there were other facts like a new global economic institutions like the Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the OECD, and this triggered a wave of globalization, which also triggered growth. Then we had at this time the competition of economic system. There was still the competition between planification and market economy, and this triggered our governments to be successfuler than planning economies. We had also the political aim of avoiding the fascist attractions of the 30s, because the fascism has led to the Second World War. You know, this was strongly because of unemployment, economic problems, and the governments were interested in avoiding that, so that fascist dictatorships wouldn't have a chance anymore. Then we had also applications of technical innovations. There's American economic historian Gordon, and he says that in the 19th and 20th century, there were very important technical innovations which triggered growth, such as pharmaceuticals, machineries, chemicals, and machines. There are people who say that the washing machine is the most important technical device which was introduced after the Second World War, because it freed women up to 15 hours per week from washing clothes to work for the market, to produce something. Then, of course, we had the baby boomer, and we had an expansion of banking and finance system, and also this allowed to grow. So there was an unfolding of capitalist accumulation and also of public spending. You see, many signs allowed this kind of growth and explosion. So these graphs, they are from people who do research on Anthropocene. You know this most probably, and they show what has changed in the 50s, and you see GDP, fertilizer consumption, water use, all these things started in the 50s, and that's why also this period, or this area is called Anthropocene. But it has a backside, and this you see here. Also, the harm on the environment and the overutilization of ecosystems is also very clear. So you see carbon dioxide, methane, domesticated land, and all these things also worsened in the 50s. So when you compare these two graphs or these two pictures, and you say, okay, we would like to solve the environmental problems. And if we really think, okay, growth is very useful, and so then you would say, okay, we need a decoupling. We need a decoupling of the growth and environmental use or environmental harm. And that's what I tried to show here. And here is a concept of what means decoupling. So growth is going on. If the resource use is lower, we speak of relative decoupling. And if the growth use really is dwindling, is reduced, we speak of absolute decoupling. And if you remember, if you see again this graph, you see you come to the conclusion we need absolute decoupling. So and decoupling in resource use, but also in environmental impact. Do we have this absolute decoupling? No. We cannot observe it, and there has been recently more and more publications. I have quoted here two. These are mostly the most well-known. So, for example, Haber, they have done a review of 800 publications, and they come to the conclusion: no, there is no absolute decoupling. There are a few exceptions, but very little exceptions. We have relative decoupling, but no absolute decoupling. And why is this so? I listed a few reasons. Because we have growth in consumption still. It's very obvious. We have rebound effects. Who is not familiar with the term rebound? You are all familiar with that, okay? So just to tell you, the present publications say that 50%, a rebound effect is 50% in average. This means that 50% of the technical possibilities to reduce resources are only used, and 50% go in growth or something else. Then we have efficiency improvement, which are insufficient, has to do with rebound, but not only. We have rising consumption of energy production. This is the AROI term. Is anybody not familiar with AROI? Okay, good. So this means energy return on energy invested. So how much energy do I get out when I invest something? And this AROI is increasing because we used energy resources. First, we use them which are cheap and easy to use, and then we use those who are more expensive or hard to use. So, for example, in the 15th, the oil which we were using was very easy to produce, to find, but now we have to go 3,000 meters in depth to get oil or to get gas. And of course, we need more energy to get energy. Okay? And this will mean that in the future, we will always need more energy to get the energy we need. So this is also a point. And then there is problem shifts in approaches. So an example is car. I mean, from fossil fuel-driven car to electric-driven cars, it's a big doubt whether this is really useful, in particular if there are Teslas which weigh 3 tons. I think you don't save very much energy and materials. We have shifting production into other countries, we have urbanization, and we have tertiarization. All these aspects do not contribute to decoupling or even avoid it. So you see, this decoupling issue really shows us that we cannot bank on green growth. Because finally, if you take that serious, there is no green growth. But we have really to ask ourselves, shall we go on with this growth, or shall we do we need other strategies to get down the resource consumption? Okay, so now I will blend in one slide to show you that all that is not new. And I make reference to the limits to growth. This, 72, the Meadows report, limits to growth. Is anybody who has never heard about that? Okay, yeah. So I cannot go that much into it, but in 1972, there was a report by Meadows and others. Interestingly, it was commissioned by industrial people who realized that exponential growth cannot go on forever. And this report really triggered up of a huge debate. Some people say it was the founding moments of the environmental movements, and others really kind of absolutely refused and this study. And also there was also some discussion which was kind of how to say, there were lies, was very cynical. So, but what I want to show you here is that the models of 72 are confirmed. Last year there was the 50th birthdays, and there were all over again there were studies. Was it true? Is it true what they said? Was it reliable? And you see here 2 graphs from the update of 2002, so 30 years after, and Harrington 22. She confirmed that 2 models, 2 scenarios are more or less confirmed with the present data. And this is business as usual or comprehensive technology. This means using a lot of technologies. And you see in the BAU 2, we have kind of collapse. And here, if we use these technologies, we could still have some moderate decline. And here I quote a few other publications which also come to the same conclusions, that the scenarios are more or less confirmed. And here I put in a quote because this was very interesting. In 2013, in England, there was a study commissioned by the actual profession. These are Versicherungsmathematiker, and they were interested, was that true? Is it reliable? And indeed, at the conclusions, they say the 1972 limits to growth study highlighted that following a business as usual path ended in global economic and social collapse by the middle of the 21st century. This is the path that economic development has continued to follow for the past 40 years. So you see, we are quite well on track with these scenarios. Okay, that's to the past. And now I would like to go into 2 topics which might show you that growth is really a big social issue and is at the core of our development and also of institutions or of political relations also, which are very dear to us and very important. The first is the distributional justice and growth. So here I listed 3 points. The first is that growth allows to distribute and reduces the pressure for redistribution. If there is growth, those who think they don't have so much, they get something. So politicians do not need to redistribute, but to distribute, and that's much easier. Sometimes we have only the elevator effect. It means that all people get up, but the difference remains the same. Some people say that this is what happened in the 50s, I think on part. Then I quote an American, I will quote him also at the end, Wallich in 72. He was really very hardly attacking the study of the meadows, and he said growth is a substitute for equality of income. So long as there is growth, there is hope, and that makes large income differentials tolerable. So also this perspective, someday we will get rich. So now I could go in all this idea of meritocracy, but this is something else. And the last point, growth reduces the gap of wealth. And here I quote Piketty. I don't know whether you are familiar with him. He's a French economist. He became very well known with his book, The Capital of the 21st Century. And I show what are his ideas. He's historian, he showed the upper line, that the return on wealth is always between 4 and 5%. And wealth, I mean real estate, other luxuries or also financial assets. And he says through the history, it's always between 4 and 5%. And then he calculated the growth rates. This is the lower line. And you see between 1950 and 2012, the difference was as small as never before. And he says this is due to the high growth rate. So, and also he can prove that with a lot of distribution data that social differences were quite small and in this period. This is also due to taxes, maybe in the US, income tax or wealth tax was up to 70%. We had quite high tax rates, but still, you see, and now he says since 12 about the growth rates go down, the return on wealth will remain above 4%. So he thinks that, he predicts that the gap is widening again. And he has a huge debate what that means for democracy and social coherence and all that. So this is to say that without redistribution policies, without particular measures for wealth kind of reduction or, we will get bigger social gaps, and this means also more social unrest. So that's why, of course, growth is for many politicians and many people in the society very important to avoid such problems. This is distribution. And then the second point, which I think is very important to consider in this topic area, is work, paid work. And I believe even that it's one of the most important growth driver, political growth driver. And that's why also we edited this book, Post-Growth Work, to show the whole problem area. So why is it a big topic? Paid work is very important for us. It gives us an income, it provides entitlement for social security, it gives us social recognition, it enables integration. But also, it's a very important basis for the government for its income. In Switzerland, nearly 60% of the public income is based on paid work through income taxes and through our contributions to the social security. So if there is unemployment, or if people don't earn that much, the income, the public income will get reduced. So that's why also the governments, of course, they are very interested in many people being employed and many people earning a lot of money. But it comes worse. We are in a trap, in a productivity trap, it's called. And what's that? If we have technical progress, and the technical progress increases labor productivity. And if labor productivity is increased, this means that people get freed. For example, in the supermarket, if we scan now the things we buy, we don't need anymore the salespersons, they get freed. So then we have also taxation. I don't go into that. So an increase in labor productivity means fewer jobs. This could mean unemployment. Then the governments are called to put in growth policies, which means economic growth. But with economic growth, you also introduce technical progress, because new investments always means that the technical progress is already incorporated. And then again, we have technical progress, we replace labor, we get people unemployed, we need growth. And this is the so-called productivity trap in which we kind of are included, and for which we do not have really measures to get out of it. Just to mention a last last message. Keynes, some of you might have heard of this important economist Keynes, and he said in the 30s, in 100 years, we will only work 15 hours per week. Because he said there will be a lot of technical progress, and this will allow us to work less. So the technical progress will be used to reduce less and not, as we do now, to work as much as nearly in the 20s. So that's why we need constant economic growth to keep the people employed, to keep the social security financed, and to keep this system going. There are debates how to change, but you imagine if you see the very important dimensions of paid work, it's not so easy to change things here. Okay, these were these two very important points. So, wealth distribution, social distribution, and also work. And now I will come to the research, which research is done. Three topics. The first is IPC modeling is based on economic growth. So maybe some of you use this data, and there is now a huge debate going on. Why is there IPC modeling based on growth, and why don't they consider degrowth or other strategies? So here you see the GDP, you see the different scenarios, and you see that even the green line, SSP1, which is the sustainability scenario, has quite high growth rates, because the consideration is that you need growth to create on a global level, to create more equality, and also growth to replace, to introduce renewable energies and things like this. But this, of course, means that we have also higher emissions, which means, I try to write it here, we need additional carbonizing. We need the BECCS, this is the bioenergy carbon capture and storage. We need the DACS, the direct carbon capture, but this needs a lot of energy again. So, and it's uncertain whether it's possible. It's highly energy intense, it's land intense, and also we ignore other planetary boundaries, for example, biodiversity. So you see there is definitely a problem with these models, and that's why some discussion is starting now. In the last assessment report, the growth is mentioned, but it's not yet introduced in modeling. It's mentioned that it's important, that it has to be considered nearly in each chapter. I introduced this link of Tariq, and he showed very well where in the report you find degrowth and these considerations. And here I just show you that modeling starts, there's a growth modeling, and the green lines, you see that they start to introduce what happens if we consume less, if we don't grow, if we use less energy, if we have sufficiency and things like this. Yeah, and then there is, here I quote another publication from Germany. They developed a completely other model to also show that with other strategies we can go below 1.5 degrees or we can reach it. Okay, so the second topic I want to introduce is enterprises and growth. So most of you might think enterprises need to grow. That's their mission, to grow, to become bigger, to become more profitable. But indeed, that's not really the case. In Switzerland, we have 95% or 90% are small and medium enterprises, and many of them do not want to grow. And there has been some discussions. There is one study which I initiated. This was in Germany done, and it was about 700 enterprises. It's not representative, but it shows that older enterprises have less tendency to grow than young ones, which is normal. Bigger ones would rather have a larger growth tendency than small ones. If they use external capital, they grow, of course, because they have to pay back. If they are in fast-growing or shrinking markets, also they have more growth strategies. And if they are in international markets, also they want to grow. But you see that, you imagine there are many firms which are not in such markets, but which are in local markets, which are small and so. And that's why in the studies they found that 45% of the enterprises are stability oriented and 53 are growth oriented. So you see there are many enterprises who do not really need and want to grow. We have a research project which tried to get into that, and I had a student which investigated whether small and medium enterprises in the construction sector in the Berner Oberland want to grow. And indeed, it was very interesting because we chose also a sector which is very normal, which is not alternative, but it's really normal economy. And she showed that many, more 2/3 about, are stability oriented. They shy away from growth because if they grow, they need to find work for their staff. They try to avoid even growth if there is strong competition. They know that if competition is very strong, or even destructive, they will gain less than if there is normal competition. There are enterprises which shrunk and which are very happy. And also these enterprises, they apply strategies to not have to grow. Like they go into niches, or they collaborate, or they do further education and things like that. They really apply strategies not to grow. So this means many enterprises can also go along without growth. We do not consider that we need growth just so that enterprises can grow. Of course, management schools teach that every enterprise wants to grow, and there is still a huge debate, research, and also education task how to get along, how enterprises can get along without growth. And now the last topic, which I'm kind of very concerned at the moment, but I don't have a solution. And I will show you what concerns me, kind of. Switzerland has population scenarios. Most probably you know that. These population scenarios tell us that in 10 years we will be 10 million or something like this. And these population strategies, they are kind of extrapolated. It's very easy. I don't get into that. And these population scenarios, they go into the provisions of the GDP, they go into transport perspective, in energy perspectives, in public finances, in sector development. So these scenarios say we will grow, and then all the other planification will follow that. So whether we will grow in population or not, things are prepared that we grow. Because there is idea we will have growth in the future. And in a country like Switzerland, if you prepare the infrastructure for growth, there will be growth. Because Switzerland has so good factors, there will be growth, and also public policies will be adapted so that it's growth. And also here, unfortunately, this is in German. I didn't take the time to translate everything, but also it goes into all the planning, like Kantonsplan, Richtplan, and all of these things. And they also prepare for the growth. And we get more and more conflicts between what is available and the growth. Because people who are in infrastructure, they say it's getting more and more expensive to develop the infrastructure because we have less space, because there are more interest, and the conflicts get bigger and bigger. So we have this situation. At the same time, I want to introduce a concept from ecological economics. It's very simple. The economy is a subsystem of the society and of nature. I mean, you all would agree on that, which yet means that here, this is the concept in ecological economics. We consider the economic system a subsystem, but which means also that we have to delimitate the economic system. How big can the economic system become so that the environmental system is not destroyed? And in ecological economics, we have also this idea of a full world where the economic system kind of grows and even breaks the boundaries, and which means destruction of the environment and of ecological systems. So the question is, where are our boundaries? And we have boundaries. We have different boundaries, like for instance, in Switzerland, forest area, which is a boundary. You know that in Switzerland, forest may not be reduced, the forest area. We have the 1.5 degree, we have secondary homes in Switzerland. Villages are not allowed to have more than 30% of secondary homes. We have now this 17 or 30% of natural habitat, you know, in the biodiversity strategies. Or, for example, we have in Zurich open space targets. So this means we have already various targets which could frame the economic system, but they are not enough, or sometimes they are not observed. So my big question is, what could be a frame to which is considered in the further development in the planning of Switzerland? And if you have this frame, you start to work to question, if we have development, what is an adapted transport development? Does it mean, if we have this framework, does it mean that everybody can have a car and need so and so much space? Or if we want to remain within this framework, we have to reduce the space, for example, for transport, if we want to grow in population, or if we want to grow in something else. So I think that we could trigger a discussion about our development and also about our way to live and how to consume if we take such limits serious, and if we had them well developed and published and debated in the society. So I think this would be a very important task. I don't know yet how to tackle, but I think we should do that. So if some people of you are interested, we could try to set something up. I'm really, really interested in that. So that's the end. And now I want to finish with another quote. And this is a quote of 72 of this Wollich. And actually, most people think that permanent economic growth is not possible, because we are in a limited sphere, in a limited system. However, as growth is so important in our society, people usually want to discuss this topic later, when the problems are, these and these problems are solved, or if this and this is, but not today. And that's what friends tell me, that, or I also see that, yeah, we can debate the growth question later when these problems are solved and these problems. And this was already in 72 like that. So I finish with the following quote. Wollich, who opposed the meadows, he said, "In a world without growth, without change, is as hard to imagine as a world of everlasting growth and change. Somewhere in the dim future, there may lie a world in which physical change will be minimal. It will be a world of much greater equality, hopefully a much more humane and a less materialistic world. We shall not live to see it. Meanwhile, let us give a boost to the old tax base to get the government revenues growing again." So that's a little bit the thing what we still see today. Thank you very much.